You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC, our last episode before Christmas, because I'm going to level with you. My team is stellar. Producer Nick, producer Lou, producer Daniel, producer Allison in Indianapolis. We are beyond blessed here with our crew. They have worked with very few to no days off in the last year. Anytime I was up and delivering some kind of the news, they were right to it. So our team will be taking the entire next week off, and we will be with you following that. Let's get into the news. Enough of the dawdling, I should say. Fulton County in Georgia. Fulton County in Georgia. You remember during the 2020 election that you were told if you suggested that there might be fake ballots or illegal ballots or uncertified ballots that were counted in that election, you were a conspiracy theorist, you were a traitor, you were likely going to hell and everyone that you know, and you should be ashamed to question democracy. And well, now Fulton County of Georgia has now admitted we do not dispute that 315,000 votes, which lacked any signatures from the poll workers, were counted in 2020. Under Georgia election law, it is required, no ifs, ands, buts, or coconuts, that an election worker, a judge, a Republican judge and a Democrat judge, look at the ballot, determine, yes, that is indeed a legal ballot, and they sign it to certify it. That is a requirement. And by the way, the reason it is a requirement in the state of Georgia, ever since Reconstruction, it has been a value of great import to the federal government that, especially in the southern states that were once a part of the Confederacy, that voting laws are very, very specific so that things are certified. Because essentially what ended up happening, for about a century and a half in Chicago has now become, or at a time was the concern for down in Georgia. So while the federal government was able to prevent some kinds of fraud, according to an article by the Federalist and their election correspondent, Brianna Lyman, also a friend of the show, the admission came during a December 9th hearing before the Georgia State Election Board, stemming from a challenge filed by David Cross, as a local election integrity activist. Cross filed a challenge with the State Election Board in March of 22, alleging that Fulton County violated the Georgia statute in the handling of advanced voting ahead of the November 2020 election, counting hundreds of thousands of votes, even though polling workers failed to sign off on the vote tabulation tapes that are critical to the certification process. Now, Fulton County has admitted that, yes, indeed, 315,000 ballots. No signature, no actual certification process, nothing. Just sent right along through. Now, in case you're wondering, well, Tony, why does that matter? As a reminder, Joseph R. Biden narrowly won Georgia, 49.47% to Trump's 49.24%, a margin of 0.23%. That's 11,779 votes. Producer Nick, again, you know my math, it struggles from time to time. And I just got to ask you, 315,000 or 11,779. Which number do you think is bigger in this instance?
I learned that when you're asked a question like that, you imagine the alligator is eating the bigger number.
Okay.
So the one the alligator wants, I'd say, is the 315,000.
So you're saying that the 315,000 number is bigger. Well, yeah, that's correct. And that is disgusting. Again, I will remind you that at the very least, those who had concerns and questions that were lambasted as crazy, evil traitors to the Republic, regardless of whether Trump would have received all of these ballots in his favor or some of them had they not been counted. We don't know the breakdown yet, but that is a major update now, all the way at the end of 2025. Additionally, this is breaking. Over 70 targets across Syria have been struck in tonight's large-scale strike. It's an operation against ISIS. This is according to U.S. official who spoke to Fox News. I have spoken to a friend of mine in a prime military contracting company who currently has a couple of security teams on the ground over in Syria. And yes, we can confirm that a combination of missile and rocket strikes as well as what may possibly be something in conjunction with the U.S. Navy, took place in striking a couple of these targets, at least in Syria. This is in response, as we all know, to the ISIS shooting of several U.S. troops, as well as interpreters that were also U.S. citizens in the region by ISIS. That brings us over to the updates from the Brown University shooting. Sorry, I know I'm not going heavy into the analysis. There's a lot of news, and I already spent the first couple seconds of the segment thanking my wonderful staff and crew here. The Brown University shooting. Yesterday, we covered as the updates were flooding in. By the end of the evening, we watched federal law enforcement, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the FBI, and U.S. Marshals swarm into an extra space storage facility in Salem, New Hampshire, which, by the way, appears to have better security cameras than anything that federally subsidized Brown University, the Ivy League college, could put together. And they ended up finding an individual that was dead inside his own storage unit. Now, before we get into some of the details on the Brown University shooter, it should be noted they believed he committed suicide in this particular storage room that he recently purchased right before federal agents went in. It was the gunshots that prompted the officers to then enter the building. They had tracked him to this particular storage facility due to a Reddit post by a homeless person. You may remember that a couple of days ago, it was considered an awful thing to give tips to the Providence, Rhode Island Police Department, to Brown University officials. Why? Because, well, you guys were coming up with all of these crazy, insane conspiracy theories. One of those was that there was a tan Kia with Florida license plates. Now, apparently, this is according to the Fox News report, which we'll play here in just a second. The individual who is homeless contacted the police department and mentioned his tip from Reddit that had been previously ignored, and finally got federal law enforcement to start tracking this individual down. Here's the Fox News report.
Open by a homeless man who goes by John. Now, investigators say that he's a former Brown University student who grew suspicious of the gunman when he locked eyes with him in the bathroom just 2 hours before the shooting inside the Barris and Holly building. The gunman, his name is Claudio Neves Valente. Now, John, pictured here, is the man police were looking to speak to because of how close he got to that gunman. John said he followed Neves Valente out of the building before the shooting and played a game of cat and mouse in the neighborhood. Surveillance video shows Neves Valente running away from John.
Okay, so we had a guy who essentially, in this instance, almost apprehended the shooter. Now, I'm sorry, I have to take a moment because this really upsets me. I made the case that if the Brown University officials and the Rhode Island Providence Police Department had gone in front of the public and said the name that they believed the suspect had, this Portuguese immigrant, and they had put his picture in front of everyone, then perhaps, God willing, a bystander, much like, let's say, John, this homeless man, might in fact have been able to capture him before he killed himself, and also the MIT professor that he also shot. And because the Rhode Island police forces had to get out there and play Barney Fife and flip off the crowd, more individuals are dead, including now someone who will not receive true justice for his crimes. Producer Nick, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, this is also congruent with some of the stories that students were coming forward with, suggesting that the man was on campus for quite a while before the shooting, casing the buildings to coincidentally look for the cameras, and students had been confronting him throughout the day.
Now, look, as far as cooking up self-congratulations, Police Chief Lopez went on TV last night to pat himself on the back. I'm not going to talk about that absolute fool. Instead, I am going to play a quick clip of the U.S. Attorney, Leah Foley, outlining a very important detail in this particular case before we send the radio crew to commercial. Here she is.
Do you think he entered there this evening?
No.
He entered an hour after what happened in Brookline.
Yes.
And do you know how long that's for?
So the shooter entered the storage facility for the first time, purchased this right after he shot the MIT professor.
Did he rent that? Like how long?
Our understanding from the financial investigation is that he had rented a storage facility at the location in Salem, New Hampshire in November.
Wow, no nonsense, straight answers. Here you go. He went to the facility that he purchased right after the shooting. No nonsense answers from a U.S. attorney. It's almost like they're far more competent in this particular instance than the absolute fools running the Providence Police Department. We're going to send the radio crew off to commercial. We have more news to cover here, including good old Judge Dugan, the illegal immigrant letter outer. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. All right, to the live stream crew. Judge Hannah Dugan, the one who was accused of letting an illegal immigrant out of her courtroom in Milwaukee, helping the particular illegal immigrant evade federal law enforcement.
For the first time, we're seeing Judge Hannah Dugan outside her courtroom April 18th, wearing her black robes, appearing to confront several federal agents there to arrest Eduardo Flores Ruiz, a Milwaukee man and Mexican national charged locally with 3 counts of domestic battery. This video, released by Milwaukee County through an open records request, is part of the evidence in the case against Judge Dugan, who's charged with obstructing a federal investigation concealing Flores Ruiz.
As of today, she has now been found guilty of felony obstruction and will be facing up to 5 years in prison. That is someone who broke the law. That is someone who was then charged and arrested, and now they have been found guilty of that crime. There are a lot of us out here who are currently, as I'll describe later in our interview with Mike Howell, kind of like Chris Farley, in which he's in the van down by the river sketch and he's yelling as he squats down low, "For the love of God, arrest somebody." Here was an instance in which a local judge violated the law and then was charged and has been found guilty. Now, hopefully she'll be sentenced to the maximum of the obstruction charge. In the meantime, over on the other Department of Justice side, the Jeffrey Epstein files have been officially released, sort of. So as you recall, Congress announced that a lot of the Jeffrey Epstein files that remained sealed were to be released, with just a few remaining details on the victims themselves kept obscure. So if there was someone who, let's say you, were out walking on the sidewalk and Jeffrey Epstein was out leaning up against the tree with a toothpick in his teeth, and there was a photo taken of him at that moment, you were in the background, that photo can be released because you're not a victim. In fact, according to those in charge of releasing the files for the Department of Justice and, by the way, independent court systems in the United States, quote, per the Epstein Files Transparency Act, the Department of Justice was specifically instructed only to redact the faces of victims and or minors. Only victims and or minors. So if there's photos of Trump, they're to be released. If there's photos of Bill Clinton, boy, howdy are there, they're to be released. The testimony of minors themselves could in fact be redacted. There is still a lot of situation regarding that's very controversial. We're going to dig into that, of course. In fact, I want to just start showing you some of these photos. We can start showing them now, even though the radio crew's in commercial, because they're on the radio. They can't see these photos. So first of all, here's Bill Clinton with his arm around Michael Jackson in an area that looks like a boat with Jeffrey Epstein. So we're starting off strong. Bill Clinton with his arm around Michael Jackson. Excellent. Also a photo of Bill Clinton in which someone is, according to the description in the photograph, a minor whose face has been blotted out, is providing a hand on his manhood as he rests in the hot tub with Jeffrey Epstein. There's another photo of Bill Clinton dining with some other individuals implicated with Jeffrey Epstein. Here's Bill Clinton swimming with Ghislaine Maxwell and a minor who was victimized by Jeffrey Epstein. Here's Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein in a crime that can only be called the ugliest shirts known to mankind. Oh my dear sweet goodness, these are hideous. Here's Bill Clinton with one of the minors on his lap. Again, Pictures of Donald Trump have already all been leaked. Not to mention the documents in which, Epstein was like, I really hate Donald Trump. Let's keep moving, though. There are some other criticisms. There are a lot of pages like this that are just completely blacked out. Now, we can confirm, based on the code of these particular pictures, or I shouldn't say pictures, the PDF file system online, that these aren't image-heavy pictures. This is text that has been obscured based on some of the individuals doing the data mining in this particular redaction. Now, again, I'm not going to speculate. I'm just going to share some of the photos that we do have. It should be pointed out, the New York Times has written an article in which they've pointed out, yeah, Trump's not in this. The New York Times has found no evidence implicating Mr. Trump in Mr. Epstein's abuse and tracking of minors. None. Now, there is one series of photos that's making the rounds. We're going to talk to it briefly when we come back. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. We got to pick up the radio crew from commercial.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
A very Indiana Christmas to you, wherever you are, joining us around the country. So the Epstein files have been a lot more released than Chuck Schumer alleged that they were going to be. And now a new series of photographs have started circulating because there's a lot of photos of Bill Clinton, groping minors and receiving hand jobs in, swimming pools with Jeffrey Epstein. Which, by the way, for those who had suggested that there was no evidence at all that Jeffrey Epstein was essentially collecting minors for anyone but himself, Bill Clinton is in a lot of these photos. Now, you probably could have assumed there would be a lot of Bill Clinton, given that Bill Clinton is on 2 paintings. He was in the dress in Epstein's New York office or residence, I'm not sure which. And then, of course, the weird caricature that includes Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton hanging out in a caricature-like kind of thing in his bathroom.
I thought he would have learned his lesson after Monica Lewinsky.
If you think he learned a lesson through the Monica Lewinsky scandal, you need to go back and, I'd say, watch the tapes. But
I got to do a better job of hiding my evidence.
Well, there is another photo out there. These are being passed around. Look, it's 2 Polaroids of Donald Trump with young ladies. So 2 things here. First of all, in these photos, Donald Trump appears to be ripped. I mean, just saying, in these particular photos out here that are being passed around, see, look, Donald Trump with these 2. So first of all, as Trump will say, Trump has never been ripped like that in his life. So no. And in fact, even Snopes is coming in to say, no, these are not real. These are AI generated photos. As many as some would like to believe, Donald Trump has never been the weird Bob Saget haircut brown. And that's AI. Also, that girl on the left has 6 fingers. So, no, folks, I'm afraid not. That's all we've got on the Epstein side of the news. Now, you say, Tony, what's going to happen next? Well, I would assume, based on the comments made by James Comer, who has seen a lot of these photos in the House Oversight Committee, it is very, very likely that Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton will be held in contempt and brought before the House to testify on this. There is now enough sufficient evidence that is not hidden in the old statute of limitations, might we say, that is going to keep Bill Clinton from likely being held in contempt. And look, if they can throw a lot of former Trump officials in jail for a little bit for not testifying before Congress, what's good for the goose is in fact good for the gander. So be on the lookout for those things. For those who are saying, well, nothing's ever going to happen on that, you must not know James Comer. That man holds a grudge like Chuck Grassley holds a microphone when releasing federal document leaks. So I don't think you need to worry too much about that one just yet. I do want to point out one clip that's really hilarious on the news side. MSNBC's Lisa Rubin has awkwardly run to Bill Clinton's defense. This is provided by Western Lensman, friend of the show, provider of a lot of our excellent clips. So first you'll hear Lisa Rubin talking about how Donald Trump was with what could be minors or survivors. All were found to be neither in those particular images. And then hear what she says in the contrary in the second clip regarding Epstein and Clinton.
I think it's kind to call it a manhunt right now, in the sense that manhunt generally means you know who you're looking for. If, at least from what...
I might have the wrong clip there. I confused myself for a second. Sorry. Here's MSNBC's Lisa Rubin.
One thing that stands out to me is the people whose faces are not redacted as compared with images where we can see that the women have faces that are redacted or blurred out.
Now, by the way, this photo that she's pointing out on the December 12th leaks, all of those were found to already be unblurred. And no, none of those are the minors or those who were considered victims of Jeffrey Epstein. Nope. They released a photo that was already out there, and then they just blacked over some faces. No, not like the Jimmy Kimmel way. I mean, like they drew black boxes over the faces and then tried to pass it off as new. So she's like, well, it could be Trump and minors. I don't know. There's this black box in the way of their face.
That suggests to me that either the estate and or the committee believe that some of these women are either minors and or survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
Now see how she describes the new photos with Bill Clinton, again, in the hot tub receiving hand service from a presumed minor or survivor.
Some images of Bill Clinton in this drop. Some of them show Bill Clinton with other people.
Other people. Just other, it could be anyone. Could be, could be Michael Jackson. It could be Bill Gates. It could be Mickey Mouse. Who knows who it could be?
Some of whom are known, some of whom are not known.
I Googled them. I have no idea who this person is. Wow.
But of course, we have no context for where these images come from.
Yes. I need more context of Bill Clinton clearly receiving a friendlier than normal handshake in Epstein's hot tub. Yes. What was he at? What was he like, offering cigars again? Incredible. Producer Nick.
If your argument is boiling down to, well, we may support pedophiles, but so do you lost the argument.
You did, in fact, lose the argument. Now, let's shift over to some actual real news that matters beyond what Chuck Schumer can no longer hold over the Republican Party. So hope that we all enjoyed it. That was great. That was a good time, a real hoot and a holler. On to real news. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is done dealing with crap. And I mean done dealing with crap. This morning we had an editor call because we do with the Daily Signal, try to do things in a coordinated fashion. And we had a little argument over whether or not to ask Secretary Marco Rubio whether he was more excited to become the next emperor of Venezuela or what the United States was going to do about the visa lottery system that was used to bring in individuals like the Portuguese immigrant that committed the Brown University shooting, and also, the MIT shooting. So our own Elizabeth Mitchell, our White House correspondent, got a chance to ask Secretary Rubio, hey, we're canceling the lottery system now for just bringing in random, spin the wheel, see where it lands, immigrants around the world. Why do that? Here's Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
Given that the Brown University and MIT shooter entered the U.S. with a diversity visa and Secretary Noem has since paused the program, is the State Department looking into considering pursuing permanent changes to the green card system, like changes to eligibility rules?
Well, I haven't had a chance to talk to her. I know they suspended that program because they want this. And the reason why you suspend this program is not because you argue everybody who came in under that visa is a bad person and is going to shoot a place up. It's because you want to determine whether there's something in the vetting of that program that's insufficient. Is there a systemic problem in how those decisions are made that needs to be addressed? So I think it's wise to suspend a program until you understand whether there's a deficiency in the program. So you just had a guy that came in through a certain route. You suspend the program to figure out whether something that came up in the interview process should have been a red flag but wasn't identified, so you can fix that before you restart the program. So I would imagine that's the process we're going to go through as well.
The competence, the full sentences, the lack of skirting around the issue. I'm sorry, come on. That's competence on display. Again, I share the same enjoyment that our White House correspondent, Elizabeth Mitchell, has that, you can, in fact, answer questions directly when a reporter asks them to you. We don't have to sit around and keep the door wedged open until we decide there might be something wrong with those coming through it. What if while we're deciding if there's an issue with people coming through the door, we shut the door? And then if we decide, oh, hey, actually it's fine, then you reopen the door. Same with the border. Let's close the border until we figure out what the heck's going on. We're going to send the radio crew to commercial. I actually have a little something exciting to talk about on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. to those over on the Daily Signals YouTube channel right now. Again, I know we're live streaming to X as well as to YouTube. Right now, we are just less than 200 channel subscribers away from 1 million. Now, I'm very excited about that for a number of reasons. Number one is because we will, in fact, get the shiny golden YouTube plaque for the set that I'm sure will screw up the lighting and everything else. Number two, I'm very petty, and I like seeing us win on just random stuff. It's excellent. It's why I'm a huge fan, by the way, of a proposal that has now been made by Senator Mike Lee of Utah. Senator Mike Lee of Utah has now proposed that the U.S. government authorize civilians to go after narco-terrorist boats in the Southern Caribbean. You've heard of the Russian rich individuals who hunt pirates off the East and West African coasts? Senator Mike Lee of Utah is making it possible so that you and the guys can go out on the high seas and Pirates of the Caribbean some narco-terrorists. That's freaking incredible. Producer Nick, please, what's up?
We were just gifted from a lovely viewer, Ace, @#, 50 channel memberships.
What is going on tonight?
Last night we were gifted 100. Tonight is another 50. You guys are way too generous. Thank you.
Incredibly kind. You guys do not have to do this. You don't have to do super chats. You don't have to tip us. Again, we don't have any control over who gets the memberships when they're gifted. It assigns them randomly to those in the live chat. That gives you access to some things earlier.
Yes, please make sure that you have your YouTube channel settings set to being able to accept memberships from other individuals.
Yeah.
If you want to be one of the people that receives a gifted membership.
And I'm just going to be quite clear again. We're so thankful for y'all. You don't have to do any of this. Incredibly kind. So again, a huge thanks to #2335. Back to some of the news. So Mike Lee, again, incredible stuff.
Yeah, you too can be the captain now.
You too, yeah, you can be the captain now. It's called a letter of marque that the United States would then give you, which, by the way, I will remind you is a hallowed tradition of the United States Navy back when the U.S. Continental Congress used to give citizens permissions to capture British vessels and then enlist them voluntarily in the Navy. The reason that cannons were in fact covered by the Second Amendment, as opposed to the weird view of Joseph R. Soda Biden, is that Americans were capturing British cannon and we're putting them on their front lawn, which, yes, that is where the tradition of your local towns putting World War I and Civil War era artillery in the town square. It is the American idea of stealing crap from foreign powers and then putting it in their yard. God bless this country.
I know what I'm going to do with my week off. I'm going to rent a canoe, paddle out to the middle of the ocean, and commandeer a 4-motor gasoline fishing boat.
Me, Kurt Schlichter, we'll throw Tim Pool on the boat as well.
A really long baseball bat.
And we're just going to go. We're going to go capture some Venezuelan drug boats. I hear some of the outboard motors that they put on those totally not fishing boats are quite nice. Now, before we bring the radio crew back in, I do want to kind of follow up on another excellent thing that Marco Rubio is doing. He's also completely dismantling the rest of the U.S. foreign aid measures to random nonprofit organizations that are feeding terrorist networks.
Of our foreign policy, and it should be used for the purpose of furthering the national interest. That doesn't mean we don't care about human rights. That doesn't mean we don't care about starvation. That doesn't mean we don't care about hunger. That doesn't mean we don't care about humanitarian need. What it does mean, however, is that even foreign aid, which is not charity, it is an act of the U.S. taxpayer. Now, American charities are free to give their money to whoever they want, as long as it's not a sanctioned entity. But the United States and the taxpayer money should be spent in furtherance of our foreign policy.
What a concept. What a concept. You don't have to spend money for a human rights campaign that's actually going to buy AK-47s in some Middle Eastern or African country. I don't have to buy... we got to bring the radio crew back from commercial. They're going to hit me. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Don't go anywhere.
The Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast, where I'm shocked at the amount of kindness and generosity that people are showing in our live stream chats this evening. We're thrilled that you're tuning in. There's a lot of news to cover. Let's get back into it. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, I'm just letting you know Again, I've said this before. People don't believe me. J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio will be the Republican ticket, just the way it's going to be. On the left side of the aisle, it will be AOC and some random white or other, like, considered mainstay individual. Man. Probably a dude. Yep. That will be the tickets going into 2028. Now, this all frames into, believe it or not, all frames into the midterms. The midterms, what we're getting into now, is where everything comes down to the next couple of years of policy being moved forward. And this means that you are going to have to appeal to things that voters want to see. One of the things that voters do by the polling data want to see is mass deportation. And we're going to talk about that with Mike Howell here in a minute. But also the situation regarding how the United States deals with Venezuela. And I'm sorry, again, I can't help mentioning this as well, that we are now, I guess, under 150 away from 1 million subscribers on the Daily Signal YouTube channel. Consider going over there and subscribing. If we pass 1 million while I'm on the air, I will brag about it from now to the end of time. And I know that our digital manager in DC, Tim Kennedy, will be slightly mad at me over that. So maybe Victor Davis Hanson as well. Who knows? I'll tease him about that one. Back to the news of the day that just won't stop. I regret to inform you that even though we are in a wonderful season in which there is a lot getting done, including that kind of stuff in the midterms, there are those who are taking the opportunity this holiday season to be really, really gross and or pathetic. So the left-wing approach to going after J.D. Vance and the Republicans has once again boiled down to individuals like Jennifer Welch, yet another one of the Botox ladies on the left, suggesting that, like, the bold move is to say that J.D. Vance, Vice President of the United States, he's a prostitute. Yeah, that'll win the voters. Jennifer Welch, go.
J.D. Vance, to me, is the biggest prostitute in American politics.
Now, that is a wild thing to say, because that is quite a high bar to cross. We have a lot of individuals who do sell out to various things. Ask Elizabeth Warren what she thinks of NVIDIA, and boy, howdy, ka-ching, she'll tell you.
Well, Monica MacGyver, I think, would be in the tight running for the largest.
I'll move on.
I didn't finish that sentence.
We'll let Jennifer continue. She says J.D. Vance is a prostitute. We'll let her make her case.
Like if somebody really, really wealthy, I think came and gave him like $200 million to not be homophobic, to not be anti.
I mean, first of all, I don't think that I don't think you could pay me to not be homophobic.
Especially not that low amount.
Yeah,
come on.
I hate to tell you this, but none of what she's saying makes sense at all. No one paid J.D. Vance $200 million to change his opinion on gay marriage. J.D. Vance has consistently been the same on this one. Why? Because he's a cultural Catholic out of the Midwest. Telling a cultural Catholic out of the Midwest to change is a losing battle each and every time. I mean, we literally celebrate individuals being stubborn at weddings here in the Midwest. There are those that unfortunately have intermarriage between Michigan and Ohio State fans. It's quite the event.
Immigrant, I think he'd be like, okay, sure, I'll do it. He has no core principles. And I remember the just deafening silence at the RNC when Usha gave a speech and she spoke about being vegetarian. And this is the political party. This is the political party where, like, Ted Cruz, one of his videos was like, Kamala Harris, you're not taking my cheeseburger. And
So, moving aside from the brilliant political analysis and theory there, I don't cheer for someone being a vegetarian. What's the big deal? Eat a steak. I mean, yeah, sure. But I mean, if Usha,
you're malnourished. Congratulations.
If Usha doesn't want to eat vegetables, that's not a political issue. That's a personal choice. Usha's not getting out there like, I'm going to take away your gas stoves. We're going to fund Beyond Meat because you're killing poor defenseless animals. No, this is not going to win voters. The midterms is all about getting people out to the polls. That is like going to the DMV. It sucks. So you need to convince people to get out there and move. And right now, in the Democrat Party, right now, here, today, the data shows really, really clearly that no one wants to come out and vote for the Democrats. In a midterm, that's going to be brutal. Here's the Harry Enton data.
How are voters feeling about Democrats right now?
Yeah, I mean, Democrats in the minds of the American public are lower than the Dead Sea. What are we talking about here? Well, let's take a look. The net approval rating for Democrats in Congress, you said it, Kate Baldwin, the lowest ever. Look at this. Overall, they are 55 points underwater. Their approval rating is south of 20%. It's even worse when you look at independents. Look at this. Negative 61 points. That means that their approval rating is 61 points lower than their disapproval rating. Quinnipiac has been polling this question for the better part of the 21st century. They have never found Democrats, at least those in Congress, in worse shape than they are right now.
Now, does this mean that Republicans can sit back and take an easy seat? No. And I have said this before. Whoever goes into the midterm confident, cocky, like they have it all under control, they lose the midterms every single time. And we're going to talk about why this matters with Mike Howell from the Oversight Project. Because right now, believe it or not, what organization may be getting a little bit lax? The Department of Homeland Security. According to some new data we're going to dig into with Mike on a brand new study. Again, I'd encourage you to, then the link of the description right now is Mike's paper. Give it a glance. Incredible stuff right now. The data that is supposed to be going out to Americans on the number of total deportations right now is being muddied. It's being obscured. It's not going out on time. And that's a problem. But we're going to let Mike talk about that in just a second. In the meantime, however, I do want to share something that is, I don't know, comical, stupid on the news side of things. This would be, the journalists are now complaining that the administration is moving so quickly that they can't take weekdays and weekends off anymore like they could with Joe Biden. Here's Caitlin Collins going on Seth Meyers' show to say that it's really kind of a sucky thing she has to work these days.
So you're doing this every day. You're in D.C.
Yes.
The pace of the Trump administration seems to be moving pretty quickly. How are you holding up?
It is insane. And I think everyone is kind of readjusting and re-remembering what it was like 4 years ago, 4 years ago. I remember when Biden first took office in January, the New York Times wrote the story about how quiet the weekends were because for reporters, every weekend had just been it was like a 7-day work week.
So did you get that for a second? She's making the point that in Trump's first term, they worked all the time, constantly. And then Biden gets into office, they all take a nap, they all go to sleep because there's nothing to cover. He's dead. He's dead in a basement, exactly.
Nap time.
Trump's back in office and they have work to do again.
And now we're back to that, basically, where it's just essentially nonstop every day. You kind of wake up not knowing what you're going to be doing, what the schedule is.
Oh, you poor thing.
I was walking to get breakfast one day this week. I was like, okay, I'm gonna have a nice little breakfast before I go to work. And halfway there, they're like, Trump's doing a press conference in an hour. And I physically ran. I want to just be very open and honest here, very, very quickly.
Caitlin Collins and I have known each other for a good amount of time, back when she was at the Daily Caller. And she did not used to be this whiny. I'm not sure if going on late night shows makes you pull that routine. If, God forbid, anyone ever drags me onto a late night show, I will not give you a sad sob story. We love doing the work. We love getting up every single ding dong dang day and getting the show stuff written for y'all. That's why the Tony Kinnett cast airs at 7 p.m. and the Top News in 10 airs at 5 in the freaking morning. There's work to do. God bless this country. Let's do it. Producer Nick.
This is the same lady who went through and recorded a video about the plaques Trump put up on the presidential wall, complaining about the Truth Social Post style descriptions that he had put up.
I had that video ready to load into the show tonight, and I didn't download it. And I'm kicking myself a little because,
that's why I brought it up.
Yeah, I appreciate you keeping that in the show notes so that I can't get it out there in time.
I didn't actually do that.
Very, very appreciated. I'm with producers like these. We're going to let the radio crew head out to commercial break. We're going to continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, I do want to point out, again, huge thank yous, really not expected at all. But right now we have yet another super chat, very, very kind. LDHBs donated $5. Nancy Butler joined with a membership. Teresa Blockhan sent a membership. Dave Fallen, $20, says, thank you, Daily Signal and Tony's team for bringing us the truth. Happy holidays to all. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you. Joshua giving memberships. I don't know what to say, guys. I'm seriously beyond grateful for all of y'all being with us tonight.
Yes, the whole team is very grateful for how generous our viewers are. Thank you.
The
very
live
much.
chat, super wonderful. Yeah, please express your kindness and gratitude to the folks in the live chat. Really, really do. And also, thank you for bearing with me. We are a little unused to all of this in the chat, and it is a smidge distracting. So thanks for putting up with my ADHD as well. Now, there is something truly disgusting that I wanted to share you to wash that warm, loving feeling out of your brains. Ice Spice, one of the Spice Girls, had decided that at a children's premiere today that she would, or yesterday evening, I guess, would strut out in something that should not be worn to like a children's SpongeBob SquarePants premiere. So here she is in a dress that might as well just be the underwear at this point.
SpongeBob, keep your eyes in an appropriate level.
So SpongeBob and Patrick did this again at this children's movie premiere, just showing up in underwear. When you tell me that celebrities care deeply about children, I think of stuff like this and I do not believe you. When you have individuals that just casually show up, hypersexualized, and then around election time, they get really serious about the rights and the issues and concern. No, do not go to people like Ice Spice for how you should be acting in public. Go to that sweet old lady in your local community who's been married for more years than you can count, who makes the best cobbler that God's ever put on this earth. You ask her who to vote for because she's got it figured out, not Ice Spice at the SpongeBob premiere. Go ahead.
This is a completely random poll. If you're wondering how to dress, Melania, this is not me trying to kiss up. Melania is very fashionable continuously. There's a movie coming out, and that's all I could think about was she's a very well-dressed individual.
I regret to inform you that I must issue a correction.
I just got fired.
No, I must issue a correction. Ice Spice, not one of the Spice Girls. I completely got that wrong. I have no idea who Ice Spice is.
I thought you were making a joke. That's why to the viewers, I put a note questioning his reference to the Spice Girls.
No, I have no idea who Ice Spice is.
She's a rapper.
She's a rapper? Oh, okay, great. That's excellent. That's wonderful.
I believe she's been featured with Megan Thee Stallion.
I didn't know that women could rap. This is an exciting day for gender equality. Amazing. Incredible.
They still can't, but they make songs trying to.
Very, very exciting. We are now less than 100 away from 1 million on the YouTube channel. We're just going to keep going tonight. The bonus tonus will, in fact, be excellent. So when we come back here to the show here in just a second, we're going to bring the radio crew back in. We got to talk about what Republicans need to do. I mentioned the Department of Homeland Security. You need to see this. It's not meant to demoralize the excellent work that is being done, but as citizens, you have a responsibility, I have a responsibility, to keep those accountable who make big promises and may tell you they're delivering, but might not be. We're going to talk about it. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal.
I really can't stay. Baby, it's cold outside.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Well, wouldn't you know it, the deportation shenanigans are turning out to be a little less excellent than many Americans were hoping for. At least that's what some of the records are starting to reveal. Mike Howell from the Oversight Project, the man who, along with yours truly, convinced hundreds, nay, dozens of Democrats in the DNC in Chicago that we were secretly, I don't know, people you could reveal voting fraud information to or other shenanigans. Mike, how's it going?
Hey, I'm glad you throw back to Chicago. That was a fun time. Thanks for having me on.
A pleasure. So I know you've got a lot of reports, stories coming out. There's a lot of stuff that the Oversight Project is diving into. But when you see the criticism of the Trump Department of Homeland Security that under Kristi Noem, and you're getting kind of mixed reports on how deportation is going. So you click on the numbers and then you don't find any numbers. Kind of sends a red flag up for a couple of Americans. Walk us through it.
Yeah, so going back as far as like the website for DHS does, and particularly ICE, even during the Obama years, the Biden years, every month, rock solid deportation numbers and numbers related to it would be posted there. Since President Trump came back, they turned off the reporting. And what we get instead are like these meme graphics of combining a bunch of like funny numbers to suggest that deportation numbers are actually like at like 3 million if you account for like self-deportations and other things. but they're not. And we dug into the numbers, and they're going to be forced to make the numbers public soon. They're actually pretty darn low. I'm talking like Obama level range, probably looking at somewhere 300 to 400,000 ICE removals. And then they'll glom together some CBP ones to say like 500,000 or a little north of it. And that is a far cry from mass deportations.
So thinking like a broadcaster, the answer that seems like it would pop most easily into the head for a talking head or someone who goes on TV as a correspondent to make excuses would say, well, I mean, the reason that there's a lot of low deportations is because all of these states aren't working with the federal government, and that must therefore account for the low numbers of deportations. It's really the blue governor's fault. Does that fit here, or is that maybe whistling past the graveyard?
Yeah, it has nothing to do really with the overall trajectory and the significant like shortage of deportations. Of course, they're not helpful. Of course, if sanctuary cities cooperated, it would increase the numbers, but it will not, significantly, zip the gap shut. What unfortunately has happened is instead of implementing a mass deportation agenda, as President Trump promised, it's campaign promise number 2 on Agenda 47, where he had only 20 promises. He said, carry out the largest deportation operation in history. There's since been kind of like an operational walk back from that, and a political walk back and a communications walk back. And I'm not saying it's President Trump, but it's, the way it's being carried out, certainly, in which like the focus has turned into criminals or worst of the worst, which is a really small subpopulation of the overall illegal population. You only have about like 500 to 600,000 criminal illegals, and we got to use like scare quotes there because they're all criminals, but these are people who have done something else. And so what that means is when they prioritize there, they deprioritize elsewhere, where the bulk of concentration of illegals are. And that's primarily in sectors like agriculture and restaurants and hospitality. And usually if you wanted to get those numbers up, like has done before in history, you would do worksite enforcement at those spots. But guess what? Republicans are scared to do that because they're in special interest pocket. And then also politically, they just don't have the spine for it. They think it's morally, more convenient to just talk about criminals rather than the morality of defending Americans from, invasion.
So again, when you look at the concept of invasion itself, what really frustrates me is that people will function it into this kind of criminal framework. They'll say, well, they're out there, robbing banks and, committing sexual assaults and doing all of this violent crime, beating their wife with MS-13 tattooed knuckles, for an example of a Maryland father, we might say. But in this particular instance, the biggest threat to the United States as a whole are the large amounts of welfare that are being pumped into those who are coming across the border. And yeah, sure, maybe they're not going out and committing a bunch of violent crime, but by leeching off of American society, it is taking resources away that I was told, you were told, were supposed to go to Americans that needed it desperately when the left brought in those programs all the way from the 60s forward.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the drain on the social services is huge, but it hits everywhere. It's like the education system, gets hit really hard. And yeah, it's already a joke and a disaster to begin with. Now it's just daycare for illegal aliens. But, up and down every policy arena you can pick out, like illegal aliens have a negative impact.
Hang on a second. I don't mean to pause you in the middle of that, because to back up onto the education point for a second, as someone who, again, as you know, was canned from Indianapolis public schools when I was at the end of 2021, I was a science administrator. Something that frustrated me beyond belief were the number of teachers that we told just had to suck it up and deal with it, when it's not just that their students spoke Spanish and no English, but spoke everything from languages from Bangladesh to southern India to northern China to eastern, like kind of the Russia and the Western Russia and the Stans regions, various languages. There's no way you can Polly Pocket something together to get that solved. It is a daycare system that, again, we know how much these big public schools are paying per student, $30,000, $40,000. That's coming out of your local property taxes. You're paying to your county. You're footing the bill, not the federal government for that.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I don't know if you guys had this up there, but like some schools then turn into Spanish immersion. Oh, wait, it's a good thing. Now the English speakers have to learn Spanish. Isn't this so great? It's a joke. And I'm glad you picked up on the daycare aspect of it, because that's how it's functioning. Like, we're just paying childcare to babysit and feed illegal aliens children who have no interest in educating them, or at least making them prepared or serious about going to school. And I hope, actually, now that we're on this topic, Plyer v. Doe is a Supreme Court case that basically expands the right of public education to illegal aliens. I think that needs to be taken care of. I know a lot of people are talking about birthright citizenship now, but that should be next on the pecking order, because if you take away the free childcare component for illegal aliens, they're not going to want to come here, and they're going to have to leave for a lot of them. And so that's on the agenda for sure that I hope gets executed. But yeah, as you said, like illegal immigration makes everything worse, but also it like changes who we are as a country and the purpose of a nation. It dilutes like the value of citizenship. It dilutes our common understanding of culture, history, and cohesion. And you're just, frankly not a country if you have too much of it. And we have too much of it right now. And so unless we deport these people, we're not going to have much of a country left at all.
I think of there was a really interesting, fascinating explanation that someone gave a couple of years ago on trying to mimic a color. So if you're an artist, you're trying to paint a picture, someone has a particular shade of purple that you're trying to mix red and blue in to create. And if you go in and then dilute that purple on the chalkboard with a totally different, in the case of immigration, ideologies, ways that you might view corruption or fraud or taking money to feed children and instead sending it to Somalia, something that dilutes culture, pretty soon you're no longer left with the kind of culture that is supposed to be assimilated to. Now, the question that I want to ask, because we could, of course, agree on this all day, our audience agrees on this, that's pretty down pat. If the Department of Homeland Security is not meeting these particular, I don't want to say quotas, but meeting the expectation of Americans, not maybe a number in the head, but a massive deportation. That was the middle ground according to the polling. That was the moderate option. What's the issue inside the department? If you have any insight on that, before we even get to how you solve it, what's going on?
Yeah, I think like an amalgamation of different like factors that weigh on politics more broadly can all be like traced back to the Department of Homeland Security. So you have, of course, like the special interest people, the representatives of industry and lobbyists and donor base that are like, don't deport our workforce. And so they hear that quite a bit. And it's why they aren't doing much in the way of worksite enforcement at all. And then there's also like the political function of it, where a lot of Republicans never were down for the moderate position, as you say, of mass deportations. Like Trump said it at the convention and it was part of like the platform. And they were all like, oh, I don't really want to do that. But they didn't say so.
You could see him sweating as he said it. It was like weird. It was like a Gatorade commercial that made you cringe.
Exactly. And then they all run out the next day. It's like, yeah, we're for mass deportation of murderers only. And it's like, but it's still the same. Trust us. They wanted to change it, right? It's the same, like, consultants and political types that were, down for amnesty, and the same problem that always has affected, Republican elite politics, so to speak. And that's, the same problem that the Senate and House right now. You got a bunch of people who aren't truly America first in any, way besides like learning to speak the accent and to survive a Trump primary. It's the same Republican Party that we had 15 years ago underneath that thin veneer. And so like another major thing is like you need a detention infrastructure to conduct mass deportations, which means a lot of contracts and money are involved, which the one big beautiful bill set aside $40 billion plus to do. Well, that money's not even going out the door to set up and stage up facilities. Instead, we're seeing this interesting development of like these state facilities with really cool names and everyone loves celebrating them, but they have like really small amounts of bed space. And what it looks like from the outside is this is a way of like get the patronage network set up. Like, you have a secretary and then she's with the governor. And it's like, look, we're like political superstars together. It's an endorsement kind of deal. And it's like, I want to see mega facilities. We gave you $40 billion. Why do we have like, the Cornhusker Clink with like 40 beds or something like that? I want like 100,000 beds. Stop giving me cool names and 40 beds.
The Speedway Slammer, and it's the size of like a Holiday Inn in Salem, Indiana. I mean, ridiculous. I mean, I don't understand. Don't get me wrong. I made an alligator Alcatraz, t-shirt design. We were excited about it, and you're right. There is this aspect of just kind of creating something that looks visually appealing to the voters, but then doesn't deliver. So the question that I have for you is: Dwight D. Eisenhower, while he was building a ton of interstates and being a pretty decent president in a lot of ways and kind of an president in some other ways, one of the things he got right is he said, we are getting a lot of these people who snuck in from 1901 to today, and we are moving them out of the country. How does the United States accomplish this in a way that you'll notice Dwight never got compared to FDR's Japanese internment camps, for example, right? That comparison's never really been made. So how does the United States, how does the Trump administration, through his Department of Homeland Security, move towards the Dwight D. Eisenhower plan and success of mass deportation? Because that's like the gold standard that we've idealized in these conversations, right?
Yeah, I mean, President Trump has held himself to that standard. He's said it multiple times. And I put out a paper about a month ago that for like the first time from a non-critical left-wing perspective, went and looked at the record of President Eisenhower's operation in 1954 and compared it to today. And there's like, incomplete data sets, and it takes a lot of analysis to, make an apples to apples comparison of, different times. There's different laws, all that kind of stuff, different statistic holders, ability to gather statistics. But the general theme is Eisenhower deported a lot more than President Trump is on track to deport in terms of percentage of the total illegal population. Probably like 5 to 10 times less is what Trump's on target for. And it's frankly because what we talked about in this like prioritization. Eisenhower would go to geographic, dense areas like farms in the Southwest and round them up. It was like block off a farm. He used military type tactics, and he would send them home. And then what happened was people started leaving because you only get self-deportation when you get real threats of deportation. And that's why no one's self-deporting now, because they know you got to kill someone basically to make the priority list. And so they got to get over that priority problem. And until they do that, the numbers are never going to get up, and there's not a chance that they can really scale.
Something that Tom Homan has echoed passionately, and I have to say, one of the things that I admired the most about Tom, meeting him before the election in 24, the belief that he has, the passion that he has for those who use illegal slave labor practices, who use cheap illegal labor, they bring it in, they need to be made an example of. The owners of those companies who allow those kinds of practices, these special interest groups, as you called them, you're running a canning mill where you have a bunch of people that are illegal immigrants, you can pay them $4 an hour. No, you need to lose your job and be in jail. I don't have any sympathy for you and the money that you have made by not only discriminating against Americans at the workplace, but using, again, slave labor practices to do so.
Yeah. Well, the problem there is they're all the Republican donors. And so like easier said than done, right? Like they're the first people to call the White House, like once, there's action going on. Half of Congress is terrified of these lobbies. And like, what we need to do politically is like, it's been effective branding for the Chamber of Commerce for us, like conservatives, like that's a Chamber of Commerce Republican. We need to like extend that type of branding to these other special interest groups, whether agriculture, restaurants, hospitality. I mean, a perfect example of how this plays out in practice is there was like actually a big worksite enforcement raid of a Hyundai plant in Georgia, and they rounded up a ton of illegal South Koreans. And then curiously, like the media got a hold of it. DHS didn't, tout it or brag about it, and they brag about everything, right? And that's another problem. It's all mass communications, not mass deportations. But President Trump ended up apologizing for that raid. It was like, we shouldn't have done that. And, we're not going to do it again. And that just tells you the game's up, right? Like if employers and rich people who make money off these people can get away with it, then we're never going to mass deport.
The average American does not care if you come here illegally or you overstay a visa or you're here on a work program or as a student, whatever the violation may be that you have strolled off the beaten path into your own, whatever, you're here illegally, whether it's from Germany, whether it's from Central South America, whether you're as white as the driven snow, or whether you're as dark as the most melanin we can stuff into a particular skin pattern. If you're here illegally, get out. Come in legally. There are reasons that we have things set up. I mean, good Lord, when we look at the terror attacks that are committed and we find out that it's some unvetted guy from Portugal or from, again, people are saying, well, why do you care it's from Portugal? The issue is not that he's from Portugal. It's that clearly he wasn't vetted properly.
Yeah.
In the case of the Brown University shooter, or when we look at the other visa overstayers who are from other countries, you broke the law, GTFO, period.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I will say where someone comes from absolutely does matter. Some countries and regions have a much further distance to assimilate into the United States, and I think we see.
Well, that's for intake. That's for intake. I mean, to remove. I don't care where you are from. If you have violated the law, no special treatment. Now, obviously, when we look at where we are importing people from immigration-wise, that is a cultural matter. But if you're here, I don't care what you are. If you violate immigration law, get out.
Yeah.
Denaturalization included.
Right. I mean, it's so obvious and simple, and it's been turned on its head, right? Like they're trying to make that categorically not true. That's simply, and Mayorkas said this out loud: being here illegally is no longer a reason for us to remove you alone. You got to do something.
He said it proudly.
It's like the 2-strike thing. I call it the 1 murder rule. And that's basically like the policy we still have right now under President Trump. Is like you're not a priority to actually be removed until you do something awful. And that's really stupid because like the law says and the people want this enforcement arm of if you're here illegally, you go, and we don't want you to get free crap while you're here. And so until this gets back to the basics in our political language, and yes, in like the Trump administration's enforcement, we're just not going to get there. And the people are going to continue to be disgusted with the way like our lack of spine in our own sovereignty. And another quick way to compare this is like in terms of the 1 murder rule. Think of it this way. No other like enforcement agency treats their issues like this. Imagine if the IRS was like, we're only looking after tax cheaters that are murderers. Everyone else can like break the law. Or if man. Yeah.
Well, if you run for office, you can commit mortgage fraud as long as you don't murder anybody. So again, special interest groups.
Yeah, there you go. Or like a traffic cop, like on the highway with his little gun.
Correct.
And he's like,
for the rest of us Americans.
Right. It's like, oh, only if you murdered someone are you getting a ticket. It just doesn't make sense. It's out of mission.
Again, wholly correct. Absolutely true. Mike Howell, the man of the Oversight Project. Now, look, you get to the end of these kind of interviews and someone will say, well, go check out this video. Go check out this article. I'm going to give you some substance. We have a link in the description. It is an excellent outline of the Department of Homeland Security right now and the stuff they are not meeting the standards they promised and why. Check it out. Easy to read. It's good stuff and it's good for you. It's nutritious. You can check out the crap on Instagram later. Get the good stuff now. That link's in the description. Mike, thanks again, dude.
Tony, thanks for having me on, bro.
Now, let's do just a bit of bonus tonus. Again, it's the last episode before Christmas. We are just 52 subscribers away from 1 million on the Daily Signal. We are so close to getting 1 million. Consider if you're watching the live stream right now, go subscribe to the Daily Signal. I mean, it would be really cool to hit 1 million. It would be a blast. And that said, I have something else that is a blast. Before I get to my favorite thing that I do every year right before Christmas, I have some extra painful stuff to share with you because I do, in fact, love you so dearly. So first and foremost, in the bonus tonus section tonight, I have Pramila Jayapal losing her ever-loving mind. Why? Because she is terrified, horrified, Smeckledorfed that children may not be getting federal dollars to be sterilized. Not joking. Pramila Jayapal, here you go.
And the most common form of gender-affirming care for young people is medications that simply pause puberty and have been used safely for decades.
There are now 15 different peer-reviewed studies in the United States alone. Not to mention, I don't know how many studies in the UK, in Western Europe, especially in Scandinavia, all the way over to some of the studies out of the Koreas and Japan, China, of course, as well, that say taking hormonal pausing medication will sterilize you. Guys, level with you again. Producer Nick, bio pre-med major, yours truly, science education with a minor in biology and especially focus in anatomy and physiology, OBGYN focus as well, because Cliff Huxtable was kind of a hero of mine as a kid. I always liked the helping out single mothers thing. That's a backstory none of you asked for. May I just share very briefly, we know the least about the endocrine system, that's the system that regulates your hormones, than any other system in the body. The hormones of your body are incredibly complex. They do not all work with every single person the same way. That is why some of you can take Benadryl and pass out. Some of you will take Benadryl and it will get you hyper. That has to do with some receptors in your body, along with some digestive stuff. We do not have this settled science that Pramila Jayapal is bragging about here. That is not true.
So why do my colleagues across the aisle, so-called limited government people, suddenly want government to get in the way of the decisions that parents and their kids make together?
That's what Obamacare does, though. Obamacare tells you which doctors you can and can't go to. For all of this mourning and weeping and crying over, oh, they want to get involved in the health care or whatever, I just don't care. You're a big, goofy goober. Now, my production team has once again alerted me, and I can see the live chat flying by far too quickly. Bruce Rice has just given out 20 memberships. If I flip back over to our keeping track, Gretchen, a $20 super chat, incredibly nice. I have no idea how we're going to begin to thank all of y'all who have given such incredible, generous donations to the channel. John White, 20 Daily Signal memberships. Faith Knowles, $25. Nancy Butler, a membership. We're just thankful for y'all. We'll continue with a little more on the bonus tonus side this evening. If I get too distracted, I'm going to forget what exact clips these are. Jasmine Crockett also had a really hilarious crash out. This would be Jasmine Crockett losing her mind because she says that what we really need to focus on in 2026 are black people getting slave reparations.
There's some misinformation going around about your stance on reparations. I guess just based off of someone proposed what we do with tax dollars, and you gave critique for the idea, but you weren't necessarily saying you were anti-reparations.
No.
I like this. So the reporter doesn't really know how to help her out of the hole she's dug for herself here, because from the left, from like the racial radical left, are people suggesting, hey, well, you should be for reparations and you're not. And then the rest of the country, literally the rest of the entire country says, no reparations. That's not how this works. You shouldn't be doling out money to someone because of their skin color.
And you've told me you've come lead on a couple projects.
Yes, Truth and Reconciliation in the House. That's something that Barbara Lee was leading on that I'm now working on. I think that anybody that knows me knows that I'm a fan of, making sure that people understand our contributions, as well as acknowledging the harm that has happened as relates to our people. And so for me, it's always been about what is it that we can actually get past? Okay. Because I feel like what we do is we constantly have the conversation and we're like, reparations, but it's like...
And do you know why we don't move from the conversation to the bill passing? Because it violates the Civil Rights Act. Number two, most people who have had family in the United States for a long time can trace lineage back to both those who may have been slaves at one point and those who may have been involved in owning slaves at one point. How are you going to parse that out? Again, you really get into the weird German eugenics argument of measuring how many grandparents someone has, 1/16th, 1/32nd, 1/64th. It's ridiculous.
Right. So if we were to move forward in any way, what does that look like? And so, there you
go. We need to move forward to what that looks like. And so, actually, I'll have to ask someone about it. Excellent. Thank you, Jasmine Crockett. Producer Nick.
What my confusion continuously is, moreover, just than the selection process, the way it's done. Why are we stopping at that? We don't talk about the Tuskegee experiments, even though much more recent, a very greater defined pool of people affected by that. What about during World War II, Japanese internment?
Correct.
Well, where are their reparations? Why is it that a specific event in the history of this nation needs to have reparations for a group of people, other than just the continual reminder of the need of shame to be attributed to that historical event?
Absolutely. So just as a very quick kind of a pause moment here, just to mention, a huge thank you to Jin, JR Jr. in California.
Yes, Merry Christmas to you as well. I appreciate that.
$20 super chat. Very kind. John White dropped 50 channel memberships. I have no idea how we're going to keep track. Guys, again, just thank you so much. I'm blown away. 23 subscribers until we hit 1 million on YouTube. Very, very, very kindly. I do want to mention the Japanese individuals who were interned were paid reparations. There were some lawsuits in the 70s in which there were some who suggested that they didn't get paid, and California ruled against them. They did not get paid. So like 99% have been paid reparations, but there are still some who haven't.
There have been I will agree. In my argument, I did reference that there are complications to that story, but we can continue down this road. There, Native Americans during the post-World War II efforts to mine uranium and radioactive materials, those communities to this day have stagnant ponds of radioactive water outside their communities. And this story isn't brought up by Jasmine Crockett.
No, absolutely not. Because when you use racism as a pawn, you end up treating people like racial pawns. It's an element of populism in the broader sense. When you start treating things as large-scale grievances against groups of people, you start seeing people as only puzzle pieces in a racial argument. And this is not only seen on the kind of black reparation front, but also on the Arabic equals Muslim Islamic front, which is really weird. There's this weird equation that's going on around the world right now, in which if you suggest that someone coming in from a third world country like Afghanistan is maybe they should be extra vetted because they come from a violent region, you're called racist. And it's not about race. It's about those who practice a kind of Islam which advocates for the slaughter of Christians and Jews, especially around this time of year. By the way, it should be mentioned, and we do in fact have this, again, kind of on the information for the show, that in Australia now, we reported yesterday on a terror attempt, a follow-up terror event, another terrorist attack in which 7 men were arrested in Australia for getting ready to commit another major anti-Semitic terror attack in Sydney at Bondi Beach. They were thwarted. Their vehicle was rammed before they made it to the target. Police arrested them. I'm not joking. As of now, the police have released those individuals. They're releasing them, at the end of this week. So here in a day, the next morning, I believe, because the New South Wales Police Commissioner, Mal Lanyon, says, well, they didn't actually follow through with committing the terrorist attack, so guess there's no reason to hold these poor Islamic guys here.
The information received was that Bondi may have been one of a number of locations that the males were intending to attend, but the reason for attending is unknown.
Man, these 7 young Muslim guys who have histories, again, one of them under investigation by like the Australians intelligence service for radical Muslim behavior. They were on their way, all packed, 7 people into one SUV, were on their way to Bondi Beach or other places.
And as a group confirmed by your government saying, quote, have connections ideologically to the Bondi Beach shooters.
Oh, man, but we don't know. They could have been going to Baskin Robbins. They might be going to get a new didgeridoo. I don't know.
Put some shrimp on the Barbie.
Who knows? It's a mystery.
The justification for their ongoing detention no longer exists, subject to a review of evidence.
There's no reason to hold them now. After all, we caught them before they committed the crime. They were on their way to, kill Jews. Like, again, radical Islamic terrorists do every freaking time of this particular time of year. On their way. We don't know that for sure. Probably going to pass out Hallmark cards.
They will continue to be monitored whilst in New South Wales, and we will work closely with our Victorian and Commonwealth law enforcement partners.
Yes, because we've never had individuals who are known to authorities that commit acts of violent terror, like the father and the son who were known to federal authorities who chanted openly, gas the Jews, gas the Jews, gas the Jews in Sydney. And they were known to authorities, and they ended up, of course, getting to commit that horrific atrocity. No worries, though, that the Prime Minister is announcing another gun buyback because that'll fix it. We are now just 11 subscribers away from 1 million subscribers for our YouTube channel. I really don't know what to say. Donations are still coming in. Del Deweese with another $10 super chat. A very Merry Christmas to us. Incredibly kind. As a reminder, anyone out there like the Trump administration who says maybe we should vet people and kind of put a pause on the Islamic radical import for just a while, you have individuals like the mayor of London who gets out in front of the country and in front of the world on social media, in front of his own country, in front of a press conference, in front of the world, and says, actually, Donald Trump is the racist.
Some of the things President Trump has said and done lead me to believe he's a president who is racist, who is misogynistic, and who is Islamophobic. And I'd go further. He's
Islamophobic. Oh, man. Now, ask the mayor of London how things are going over there right now. And the Christmas and Hanukkah celebrations they're canceling because individuals of a certain religion of peace just so happen to be committing certain mass crimes.
I think he's somebody who is anti-Muslim as well. My concern about when President Trump...
Wait a minute. If he called him Islamophobic, Isn't that supposed to be anti-Muslim? Aren't Islam and Muslim, isn't that the same thing? And it's so difficult to tell if they actually mean, against someone who is Arabic. We are 3 subscribers away from 1 million. Oh my goodness. We are just up close.
I think the identification there, the separation between the Islamophobic and anti-Muslim in his book is the cultural relevance. So Islamophobic people are, they don't agree with the hijab, because even people who are not necessarily Muslim wear hijab, and some of the cultural relevancies there.
I mean, again, it is really incredible to watch. It is really. We're going to go ahead and put the number of subscribers.
Yeah, the dissonance is still quite astounding
on the screen. Hopefully, see we'll hit the million mark on the show here. This isn't the worst part though, because this is also on the right. Well, wait a second, ladies and gentlemen, we have hit 1 million subscribers on YouTube. Wow. I got to be honest. That is incredible. Incredible. A huge thank you, huge thank you to all of those who are watching on YouTube. Of course, those on X and Rumble as well, to our syndication partners. Huge moment. We're extremely thrilled.
Guys. Really, truly, thank you.
Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. So aside from that, I do want to pause briefly here at the very end of the show to share, again, as we get ready. This is our last episode before Christmas. We will see you guys Monday of the next week. I do want to say very, very quickly here, most importantly, at this Christmas holiday, I would encourage you to go to church and celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ. That is what this entire season is all about. Keep your head on a swivel. Be alert. Make sure you thank your church security if you have it. Make sure that, above all, that you do with your family, if you have the chance, if you have the opportunity, go to church, celebrate the birth of Christ, who God sent to earth as his only son, who then lived a sinless life for you and for me as the Son of God, perfect, holy, and sinless, and who then was executed, was tried by the religious leaders and by the Roman government, and was then crucified on a cross. And being sinless and taking on the weight of the world's sin, the same sin that you and I commit because we are flawed human beings, after 3 days rose from the dead and conquering death and sin. That is the entire point of Christmas. And so we are,
amen, brother,
beyond blessed in this country, in the United States still, to get to proclaim the name of Christ, that we get to thank the Lord for Emmanuel, as the book of Isaiah calls him, God with us. And so from the Tony Kinnett cast crew here, yours truly, Tony Kinnett, and as well our producers, producer Nick in studio, producer Allison at WIBC, producer Daniel in the Carolinas, and then of course producer Lou in Pennsylvania. And may I say the entire Daily Signal team, we wish you a wonderful and merry Christmas. Glory to God in the highest, and peace on earth, goodwill toward men. Thank you again to all of the very wonderful and generous people on the chats this evening and the fine gifts that they have given. Very, very kind of you. And we will see you real soon. Now for the classic sign-off here. This is the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.